He's one of a panel of independent scientific experts to the government sitting on the Joint Committee on Vaccination and Immunisation, which advises the government on vaccine priority. But Professor Adam Finn is not the first of these independent experts to express some doubt about this plan to lift all COVID restrictions on June the 21st. Now, when the government here announced its roadmap out of lockdown back in February, we were promised that the various stages of which would be guided by the data rather than the dates at which they hoped that those data points would ultimately be reached. But it has to be said, in recent weeks there has been a huge amount of focus on that date and a fixation as to whether all restrictions can be lifted by June the 21st, even though the data has been moving in the wrong direction. New COVID cases are rising once again. Now, positives are that the vaccine rollout is going well. All over 30s are now entitled to go forward and get their first vaccination. But the reality is there still is a lot unknown about this new Indian variant, not least its resistance or how it stands up to vaccines. We do know that it doesn't stand up as well to a single dose of vaccine as the other variants do. You're more likely to catch this one if you only have one dose. Several independent scientific advisors have made this point about the June 21st plan to lift all restrictions. The government says it's listening, but it won't make a decision until much closer to the time. We're 3 weeks away from this so-called Freedom Day now. The government says it will make its decision in 2 weeks' time.
Doug, let's talk now about Heathrow Airport's new plans or plans to reopen that terminal. What difference is that going to make to people arriving in the UK?
I think it'll have, it has to be said, a fairly limited impact. There are 43 countries now on this red list where the greatest concern is for travellers coming from them. Direct flights to and from those countries have been banned in most cases, except for a handful. And India is one country from which we are still getting direct flights here. They will now go to this newly reopened terminal, one that has been mothballed since the pandemic began. But, you know, when the government announced its red list and its hotel quarantine scheme back in February, everyone who was coming directly from one of these countries had to go directly to a quarantine hotel, but they were still mixing freely with other passengers in the airport terminal, potentially passing on their virus if they were indeed infected. That has continued until now and until this new terminal gets up and running again. But the problem that it doesn't solve is people who arrive indirectly from places like Brazil, places like South Africa, coming from other transport hubs such as Amsterdam, for example. They'll still be mixing with other passengers on the plane and perhaps passengers too in the other airport terminals. And there's nothing new in this plan to solve that problem.